shout out to the lords and ladies of Kenyon College. Hello! Welcome in to CHGO Bulls Podcast. Brought to you by Coors Light. Make the most out of your times. Choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door via Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Basketball. Thank y'all for joining us. I am Big Dave. That man over there, that handsome gentleman is Will the Go Gottlieb. The other handsome gentleman sitting behind the boards is our guy, Steven. And that handsome gentleman on your screen with the Coors Lights looking awesome is Matt Peck. Will, how are you? You all right?
I'm good, man. This free agency period is underway, and I am dying to know what happens with DeMar DeRozan. And we're going to talk all about that today.
We're going to get into it.
We're going to get all into it.
Matt, you doing good?
I'm doing great, man. My brother and I played Calvin ball with our nieces in the backyard today. So, yeah, no complaints over here.
I went to the DMV today. That wasn't fun.
New license?
That sounds less fun.
I couldn't get everything done, so now I got to go back tomorrow.
Oh, the worst.
Yay!
The worst.
Hooray!
Dude, there's nothing worse than the double back part 2 DMV trip.
I am not
it's bad
looking
enough
forward to
to
this.
just go, but then when you realize you have like 2 out of the 3 types of information that you need, and then they like stick the form in your face like you should have read it, which you did 30 times, and you still didn't have the right thing because they aren't clear.
And this one sucks because it wasn't even my fault, and now I got to go back. But since it's appointment-based, I got to go to another one. You know, so I can't go to the one I was at. Yeah, it's like that. What up, Sean? How you feel?
Big Dave.
I gotta say, Big Dave, I'm a little surprised you didn't just work your Big Dave magic and charm whoever was working behind the counter at the DMV to get them to give you what you wanted.
The DMV is impervious to optimism.
That is fair. That is all fair. The issue was I can't charm machines. So the machine wasn't working, and I couldn't do anything to that.
The dreaded chatbots.
The chatbox match. The chatbox got me. Damn you, Vision Machine.
Chatbots got you down?
But yes, as Will alluded to, we got plenty to get into, man. Is DeMar DeRozan done with the Chicago Bulls? That is what's being reported, so we're going to get into it. And also, if he's done, where the heck is he going to go? The Lakers or maybe the Heat? That's what we're hearing about. I'm excited to get into it. I'm really, really excited to get into this, man. So let's start with what we heard, Will. Let's start with what Chris Haynes has reported about DeMar DeRozan. I love this quote that you put in here. Hayes talking on DeRozan Talks. I would call it frozen Antarctica. He goes on to say the priority is trying to move LaVine, not Lonzo Ball. But that's been their stance for over a month already. They want to move LaVine and then if DeMar is still available, shift focus to see if something can be done. The DeMar DeRozan tenure in Chicago is over. That is his statement. That is what he said. Matt, Chris Hayes, Woes, Jake Fisher, Michael Scotto, all these people have stated that this is a wrap in Chicago, including Joe Cowley. They've all said this is a done deal. Do you believe this? Do you believe it is over for DeMar DeRozan in Chicago?
It certainly sounds like it's a done deal and that it's over. All we're hearing now is it going to be the Lakers? Is it going to be the Heat? Is any other team going to get involved at the last second? Is he going to sign on just a mid-level? Is he going to sign a 1-year deal? It sounds like the sign and trade options are shrinking and disappearing because obviously that would require a 3-year deal. To me, the thing that's curious about this reporting specifically from today is that it sounds like it's because they can't find a trade for Zach LaVine that DeMar and his tenure with the Bulls is over. And that if they were able to have moved Zach at this point and gotten his money off their books, that maybe they were still going to entertain the idea of keeping DeMar DeRozan around in Chicago on another contract, which to me makes very little sense when everything else that they have done, AK and Eversley, between the draft, the Caruso for Giddey trade, and all that, points to a youth movement. And DeMar being a great mentor to younger teammates is one thing, but him being here for a youth movement makes no sense. So are we just talking about the DeMar tenure in Chicago being over because they can't find a trade for Zach? And what if they do find a trade for Zach before DeMar figures out somewhere else to go?
I hear what you're saying. I think that this probably, or at least what Haynes was trying to say was like, originally the Bulls' plan was, okay, let's get off of Zach so that we have the flexibility to then figure out what we can do with DeMar. Clearly, they were going to go young. They were going to prioritize getting, Jalen Smith in the door, Josh Giddey for Caruso, getting those younger players in. And then if you have space, now you can figure out, does it make sense to bring DeMar back or not? But at this point, the Bulls have $13.3 million below the luxury tax, so they can't sign him for more than that. I mean, they could, but they're not going to.
Yeah.
And it seems like DeMar is kind of over it. I mean, Cowley reported this yesterday that like the last straw for him was trading Caruso. We've talked about like how much does money versus winning and situation factor into it. Clearly money is important to DeMar, and you can't fault him for that. So now the question is like, okay, if it's not going to be Chicago, where is it going to be? And how does that happen? Because you can list off every team in the league and make a good argument why DeMar would help them. But the reality of the situation is there just aren't a lot of good spaces for him right now with regards to how much money teams have to spend and how much money teams are willing to give to DeMar. And that is made even more difficult by the amount of money that the Bulls have to take back in a sign and trade. As I mentioned before, $13.3 million is not as much as DeMar wants. So teams are going to have to get creative. There have been some suitors listed. Obviously, the Lakers and the Heat are the ones that people have been talking about today. But this is a situation that is very reminiscent to 2021 when DeMar had the Lakers and the Clippers at the mid-level exception as pretty much his only offers. Didn't really seem like he had a real other option. And then the Bulls swooped in out of nowhere, offered him 3x what the next closest bidder was going to offer him, and paid a pick for the right to overpay him. So that could happen again. Maybe it's a team that still has cap space. We can talk more about them, but right now it does feel like the Bulls picked a direction. They prioritized youth and Patrick Williams and, upside over retaining DeMar. I think that was the right thing to do. And I think what we're seeing is a situation where the rest of the league, I mean, DeMar is obviously an incredible player still. He's a great player and he could help a lot of teams, but the league is kind of telling you what they think of DeMar in terms of his value in dollars. I think if teams like, the Warriors or, some of these other higher level teams just had a bunch of money, he might have a home, but the expensive teams can't afford him and the inexpensive teams don't make any sense for him. And the Bulls don't have enough money now to bring him back anyway. So they're like, he may not want the mid-level exception, but that might be the best thing available to him because there's just not a lot of options out there. So we'll get into all of that, but it is just kind of a tricky standoff right now between DeMar and these other teams because the money doesn't really match up anywhere.
Yeah, and I do find that interesting that the league continues to dictate to the Bulls front office what these players are worth. Because if you guys, I'm sure you guys remember when they were trying to trade Zach, the Bulls wanted first-round picks and things like that. And, we saw the offer for DeMar that we heard was on the table from Philly, and they didn't want to kind of go after that. I'm sure they wanted more. And then it was to the point that we kind of thought he would stay, for the money. Well, I never really thought he was going to stay for the money. I thought he was gone. I said that a bunch of times on here. I just thought he was going for comfort now and trying to, fulfill his legacy, and go for legacy and do things like that and go for championships. So Matt, let me ask you just as far as how the Bulls front office have looked at DeMar and his value, how are they going forward with this when the league is telling you, dude, this is what he's worth. We don't care what you guys feel he's worth. This is what he's worth, and you're going to have to come around to this.
It is curious. And I think, look, as much as we're still dreading the possibility that the Bulls will be bad, but not bad enough next season when it comes to keeping that pick protected and away from San Antonio, and still owing the Spurs a pick for that is something that, Bulls fans aren't in love with. The contract itself, DeMar wildly outperformed over the past 3 seasons. There is no debating that. I mean, he made freaking second-team All-NBA for crying out loud and 2 All-Star teams in a 3-year contract. But the problem of paying a guy for what he just did versus paying a guy for what he might do, and that kind of, harkens back to our conversation about Patrick Williams' new deal from yesterday's show. The whole rumor about the 2 years and 80 that was maybe offered over the last month, I don't think there were really any Bulls fans who were thrilled with that idea because, that would be the front office, again, overpaying a guy for a situation that it didn't make sense to overpay him because DeMar DeRozan has been this team's floor for the last 3 seasons. Zach's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. He's been playing well. He's been playing poorly. Lonzo's been gone since the 1980s. Like, DeMar is the reason that the Bulls have been an almost 500 team for the last 2 seasons. So as far as the front office is concerned, if AK did truly want to remain competitive moving forward, or what he deems to be competitive, then keeping DeMar DeRozan around is an integral piece of that. It is the most important piece of that, right? Alongside perhaps Alex Caruso. Yeah. But you finally traded Caruso. So trading Caruso and keeping DeMar really makes no sense because that's 2 different paths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a done deal over there. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, and, I think it really, some of these other teams are kind of popping up. Mark Spears on ESPN just now said the Kings are a dark horse to get DeMar. They will be having something up their sleeve here. So, I think teams are just going to have to get creative. And somebody mentioned in the comments about the 2-year, $80 million thing.
Yeah, Anthony. Yes.
And Matt just mentioned it too. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of crazy that from both sides, the Bulls were really willing to offer him $80 million when nobody else seems to be willing to offer him more than 13 a year. What does that tell you about the Bulls?
Yeah.
And DeMar wasn't willing to take that. You have to understand your market a little bit better. And I know things broke kind of the wrong way for him to where he maybe wasn't able to get the most that he thought. But that just is kind of a bad look for both sides. And so, we can spend more time talking about the mechanics of how a move to the Lakers could work, what people are saying about that, maybe the Heat. But it just feels like right now there aren't a lot of good options out there. And he is the best free agent left on the market.
Yes.
And I do feel like that is kind of holding up some other stuff. Mm-hmm. Just because, teams aren't going to necessarily move for a Zach LaVine or start to unload assets in a trade for Kyle Kuzma or Brandon Ingram when DeRozan is still available. It's just a matter of how can we make this work? And for DeRozan, it's what are you willing to accept? Because as much as he might have pride and ego telling him he's worth more than $13 million, and just objectively speaking, he is, but the market dictates how much you make.
Correct.
That's why Zach got a max when I think a lot of people felt like he wasn't a max player. The market dictated that he could get a max then. That is not the case for DeRozan, and that's why we're seeing this kind of standoff here.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, man. Because you've heard reports also that maybe DeMar takes a 1-year deal, and does something like that. And I'm sure we'll get into all that after the break. But it's just so interesting that this guy who is this good and this talented and has defied so many things during his tenure with the Bulls, you can argue has been his best time in his career statistically, is being a Chicago Bull and what he has done for these teams. And I remember him being on Draymond Green's podcast and Draymond saying, oh, now I think the league recognizes who you are. And then you see something like this, and it's yeah, we know your skill, we know you're good, but dude, the money is what we're talking about. And that's what it's kind of boiling down to. So you're right. Both sides don't look completely great right now, but he is the number one guy, as you stated. And it's wild that you say that too, Will, because to say that he's holding up stuff, that means he's holding up stuff for the Bulls as well. Because you mentioned Zach LaVine, and I think Nikola Vučević also is a part of that as well. So it's really interesting, when this can happen and if this can happen, but it's got to happen because going to Chris Hayes and everybody that's supporting it, guys, it's a done deal here in Chicago, man. DeMar DeRozan will not be a Chicago Bull anymore. I'm going to miss him, but I understand. It's time to move on, baby. That's what we do. Coming up, we're going to talk more about DeMar DeRozan. We're going to get back into him, dive back. But first,
CHGO Bulls. Oh, you going? You go.
I got you. Fellas, do you want your grooming routine to be one and done? Well, the days of using the same trimmer on your face and your private parts are over. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped. They've come up with the ultimate package to keep your hairs trimmed down from 12 to 6. Hello. Introducing the Beard and Balls Bundle, featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger. A trimmer for the moneymaker and another for the boys downstairs. Get 20% off and free shipping with that code BULLS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code BULLS at manscaped.com for the premium grooming experience. Trust Manscaped. Just like the lawnmower, the Beard Hedger is also waterproof, so it can handle your beard grooming right in the sink or the shower without worrying about that water damage, y'all. It is awesome. Like I said, get 20% off and free shipping with the code BULLS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off free shipping. Use that code BULLS at manscaped.com. No more juggling multiple tools or dealing with subpar results. Just efficient, effective grooming whenever you need it.
CHGO Bulls today also brought to you by our friends at Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. You don't search, you match. And you match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with your candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. I watched the USA go down in flames in the Copa America last night. I know you soccer naysayers over there don't care, but they failed to get out of the group stage in Copa America, and I was very salty about it last night. I'm still salty about it now. A lot of people calling for U.S. men's national team head coach Greg Berhalter's job today, and I agree. So maybe U.S. and the U.S. Soccer Federation should fire him, and then if they need to search for a new head coach to stop being embarrassed on the world soccer stage, they should check out Indeed, because there might be some solid head coaching options out there. Listeners of CHGO Bulls will get a $75 credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on CHGO Bulls. Indeed.com/AllCity to get that $75 sponsored job credit. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed. Oh, salesman Jim already excited, typing in it's ad time. Look at him. He just loves it. He's so excited. He loves it so much.
I thought he said it's AD time, and like he thought that the Bulls were trying to get Anthony Davis somehow.
Oh, no, it's about ads. Oh, no.
I know the Bulls are trying to pull off a sign and trade for DeMar to the Lakers, but they're not getting Anthony Davis back.
No, he's all about that ad life, man. That's what he's about, sir.
Honestly, that's not the most ridiculous hypothetical that Jim has proposed about what the Bulls might do.
That is fair. That is a fair statement. Oh, man. But speaking about those hypotheticals, man, let's get into it a little bit more about DeMar DeRozan and the teams that will be interested. You just mentioned that the Kings might be interested. Well, we know one team that has been interested for a while, and that's the LA Lakers. Why do we know this? Because LeBron James is willing to take a pay cut to get DeMar DeRozan on his team. This is from Woj. This is a Woj update. The Lakers are interested in DeRozan, but they would need to make a trade to move around salary beforehand or involve a third team. The Bulls are willing to work on a sign and trade for DeRozan to get him the years and the money he wants. The sign and trade must be 3 years. Doesn't appear to be much interest on a multi-year deal anywhere with the new cap rules. We've seen the cap rearing its ugly head again on a Bulls player. But will DeMar DeRozan to the Lakers, before I ask you about the money, talk to me about the fit on the Lakers team right now. Getting a brand new coach like J.J. Redick, who you know wants to shoot a ton of threes. But then you get a guy like DeMar DeRozan who's just not about that life. A definite scorer. Can get you 50 in a game, but he's just not about that life. Do you see a fit with him in L.A.?
I see a fit with DeRozan anywhere because DeRozan's just that great of a player that he can make it work. I think a lot of people are ready to tear him down and say he can't shoot threes, he doesn't defend. Like, he's a great player. He's an ultimate floor raiser. He's going to help take pressure off of Anthony Davis and LeBron. He's going to be available every single day and help them stay afloat in an incredibly difficult Western Conference. Is it the prettiest fit? No. Is it Klay Thompson? Probably not. But, like, I think he helps you. I think he makes it work. And, like, LeBron can play off of him, too. LeBron was a 41% three-point shooter last year. DeMar's really good with the ball in his hands, and he puts pressure on defenses. He's also defended well within a scheme. So I think this, like, criticism of Zach and DeMar and these Bulls players, like, yes, there's reasons to think that they aren't necessarily, like, the best player on championship teams, but they're great players. And I think DeMar would make it work, and I think that's why LeBron is willing to maybe take a pay cut for him. To me, the difficulty is how do they get this done? Because
the money.
The sign and trade, if they were to do that, well, I'll start with the mid-level exception. Sure. So in order for the mid-level exception to even be open, and that the mid-level exception this year is like $12.9 million. For that to be open, LeBron's going to have to take a big pay cut. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's basically like the difference between whatever he makes and the luxury tax, whatever they have left over is going to be what's available for DeMar. But it seems like DeMar does not want to take that right now. Otherwise, he may have already done it. And so, okay, you turn to a sign-in trade. How does that work? Sign-in trades have to be 3 years, and you need to send back salary to the Bulls in order to facilitate that. The Bulls are so close to the luxury tax that if they wanted to do, let's say, a sign-in trade for D'Angelo Russell, they would be sending back $19 million for DeMar to sign him to a $19 million deal. That puts the Bulls in the luxury tax. We know they're not going to do that. So you need to involve a third team to offload D'Angelo Russell, or maybe you offload, Javon Carter to a third team, and that helps make the cap work. And you do take D'Angelo Russell, but now you're involving a third team. You're involving more assets to get off of guys like that. And so it's just really complicated. And that's really where the Heat are going to be too. Even the Kings, like any of these teams who want to sign DeRozan into a sign-in trade as opposed to the mid-level exception, they need to clear space. And that involves some help from the Bulls. And what's interesting is the Bulls have already put themselves in a position where they can't really facilitate it by taking back a lot of money because of the signings that they've already made. So that's the challenge. And now it's about finding those third parties where you can offload salary. It's going to be a team like the Jazz, the Nets, the Pistons, teams who have cap space and who are willing to trade you that cap space in exchange for picks. But now, if you're the Lakers and you're like, okay, I got to give D'Angelo Russell to the Nets, and I got to give them a pick in order to take on that money. Now I got to give the Bulls something for facilitating this sign-in trade, and we got to, so we got to give picks to 2 other teams just to take DeRozan. Is that worth it? And right now the answer is no. Maybe that changes or something gets done, but there's not a lot of options out there for what DeMar is asking. And so that's, I think, where you then have to turn to the mid-level exception. And from what Chris Haynes has said multiple times now, DeMar's not willing to take that. So there is a standoff there between the amount that DeMar is willing to take and what teams are willing to offer. And at some point, those are going to have to find common ground. Otherwise, he's going to be a free agent.
Matt, what do you think is the thing that's going to break first here?
Well, I think the thing that could end up being the deciding factor is, in that standoff that Goat was just laying out, how badly do the Lakers and LeBron want to go after another championship seriously in LeBron's twilight, season? Somebody may have said, I think the other day, was it McMenamin who said this could be LeBron's final season? Do LeBron and the Lakers think that bringing in DeMar DeRozan will significantly increase their odds of making it out of that gauntlet of Western Conference and giving themselves a real shot at a title, as opposed to getting bounced out of the first round, which is what happened this past season? Because if the answer to that question is yes, DeMar DeRozan will help LeBron and AD and co compete for a championship, then I feel like DeMar's side has more leverage. If you really want to win and you think you need me to help you win, then facilitate whatever sign and trade, 3-team trade, throwing away whatever remaining draft capital you have left in the cupboards to make that happen. Because I don't want to play for the mid-level exception. I'm more valuable than that. I know I'm more valuable than that. Y'all know I'm more valuable than that. You want to win? I would love to come home and play for my hometown LA Lakers and help y'all try to win a championship. Find out how to do that. Because if the Lakers are serious about winning and think that DeMar will help them, then that's the answer.
Matt, do you think the Lakers or DeMar will be the one to kind of break first on this one? Because, and I ask this because, well, we know DeMar, wants to go somewhere else. He wants to be in LA. He's made no secret about that, even during his time here. But the Lakers have kind of struck out on everyone out there. They haven't gotten that name yet. They haven't gotten Clay. They haven't gotten one of those guys. And it feels like DeMar is the only guy where there's really true mutual interest there. But there are things that are going to have to break on both of those sides. Either one of them is going to have to be the one to do it. Who do you feel would be the first?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, look, the Lakers have basically just been observers for the first 48 hours of free agency. Yeah. You think LeBron's happy about that? Okay, we got Bronny agreed to a fully guaranteed contract. Cool. Got that thing off, crossed off the to-do list. Congratulations to everyone involved. And I'm sure LeBron is thinking, I'm proud of my son. I'm happy for the two of us. This is an incredible, historic moment in the NBA. Is Bronny going to help us get closer to a championship than a first-round exit next season? No. So they've got to do something. They have been sitting on the outside while everyone else is making moves, including teams in the West that were better than them last season, improving, or about as good as the Lakers were last season, making moves and improving. So, I mean, somebody in the comments, I think it was D-Lasso, saying Windhorse reported at some point recently that the Lakers aren't focused on a championship. They want to develop their young talent. I don't know what the hell Windhorse is talking about, but that makes no freaking sense when you have a 40-year-old LeBron James on your team. What are you going to pivot to LeBron James, the mentor, pay out tooth and nail to be a luxury tax team just so you can have LeBron coach up Bronny Jr. and the young guy? No, hell no. Hell no. Of course they are a championship or bust team until the day LeBron leaves and or retires. And so if you've missed out on that player and that player and that player, and DeMar DeRozan is still sitting there, then you go get DeMar DeRozan. Figure out how to do it.
Well, we talked about the mid-level exception. Well, the other one was the sign and trade. Talk to me about those options, and can they be available right here, or what that is going to look like?
Yeah, I think it just is going to require a third team, and that's going to require the Lakers giving up more assets. So it really comes down to that. But I do think that Matt's right. Like, LeBron has a lot of power in this. He can say, look, I will sign for cheaper to get DeMar, but like, we got to get DeMar. Otherwise, right. It's going to be, I'm going to sign for the max, and we're not going to be able to get anybody, and I'm still going to be putting pressure on you to make moves. So like, how do you guys want to play this? And I don't think LeBron's like willing to just sit on the sidelines and not sign a contract for weeks and weeks here. I think they want to get something done. They're clearly trying to figure out, you know, third parties that they can involve here. So I think there's interest in DeMar. It's just a matter of how the deal gets done. The sign and trade option is tricky because, again, it would require offloading a player to a third team because the Bulls probably don't want to take on that kind of bad contract right now, or can't do it at all because they're already they would be over the tax line. The other thing is, if DeMar signs, you know, on a sign and trade, he has to go for 3 years. And if it's not for the amount of money that he wants, now he's locked into a contract making less than he wants for 3 years and he can't get out of it. So I think that's why you've heard Haynes and Woj at this point, and I believe KC even said that, well, maybe DeMar takes a 1-year deal and then he gets back on the market next summer when 15 teams are expected to have cap space and he can really sign for the amount of money that he wants. Maybe there'll be more of a market for him. The problem is he's 35. Like, he's probably not going to have as good of a season next year playing next to LeBron and AD, just in terms of like points per game, because there's so much competition there in usage.
True.
That may result in him not getting the longer term deal that he wants. So we know long-term commitment is important to him. That's why he didn't accept the 2 for 80. And we know just dollars are important to him, which again makes sense. So it's just about finding the right situation and the mechanism to make it work. To me right now, I feel like the most likely scenario is DeMar's just going to have to take the mid-level exception on a 1-year deal. He's going to have to bite the bullet, go with the Lakers, go with whatever team he wants, because the alternatives are going to play for the Jazz or the Pistons, which I don't think he's going to want to do for $20 million a year, maybe 30. I don't really know that really sets him up the way that he wants to be set up. And then if he goes to the Lakers, then they would have his non-bird rights. They could bring him back for a little bit more, or he could just reach unrestricted free agency and he could sign with another team then. So I don't know. It's not the situation that he really wants, but that's the reality of this cap circumstance right now. The teams aren't lining up to give him the money that he wants. He's going to have to figure out the next best solution.
All right, coming up next, we're going to continue talking about DeMar DeRozan, could end up with the Heat, and also where does this leave the Chicago Bulls? Let's take a pause for the cause.
CHGO Bulls today brought to you by our friends at Circa Sportsbook, always offering those tight money line splits and their low hold model, always striving to have those starting odds for game spreads, point total over-unders, and more at -110 out of the gate. Unlike a lot of other sports books these days who are pushing those starting odds to -115 or even -120 for no gosh darn good reason at all. Circa Sports also keeps as little money as possible on large market bets, futures bets, golf tournament bets, and things like that, especially compared to other sports books. They also don't limit players based on their recent winnings, unlike a lot of other sports books who do limit their winning players. Circa encourages their bettors to, of course, download and try their wonderful Circa Sports Illinois app and compare it to any other sports betting apps you might already be using or are curious about, because they're confident More often than not, you will find better user experience, better user interface, better odds, better values, better payouts, better everything at Circa. And they know without question you will find better customer service. Real people behind that Circa Sports brand who resolve any issues you might have in a timely fashion, unlike those dreaded chatbots you find at other sports books and the gosh darn DMV. Everyone send their love and support to Big Dave. All aspects of that Circa app are being run by the same team that run their main Circa Sportsbook at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Summer League, 10 days away. Download the Circa Sports Illinois app at circasports.com/Illinois-app to sign up today. Be on the lookout also for their various events, watch parties, and tailgates. Shout out to them. Always hanging out with our CHGO Cubs crew for those Friday 1:20 club afternoons at Wrigley Field. If you or someone you know may have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537. Text GAMB to 833-234 or visit areyourreallywinning.com.
Listen, you're already a cool person because you're sitting here watching us do this right here. But you want to be even cooler, you become a CHGO die hard. You will be one of the coolest people ever. Because, of course, you know, like I said, you get the podcasts and live shows from every team every day that we cover here in the city. You get the post-game shows. Of course, you get that premium written content from the golden pen of One Will the Goat Gottlieb and all the other amazing writers that we have here at CHGO. But you get 20% off of all your events here at CHGO. You heard what I said, 20% off. So guess what? When we hit Cog Hill, guess what? 20% off. Guess what? When we go ahead and go to Phoenix, guess what? 20% off. You just get it because you are that awesome, because you are down as a CHGO diehard, y'all. And, of course, all that dope merch you get for the team, and you get a free T-shirt when you become a member. You can get the one that the GOAT has on right now.
Pizza.
And, of course, that members-only Discord, that CHGO Lounge. I was up in there talking wrestling. I'm going to be in there talking Bulls soon, man. Just look out for your boy. I'm going to be up in there. So you get all these awesome things, including what we do here on this podcast, y'all. Save you some money, become a diehard, be even more cooler. So, guys, well, before I get into that, let me just say, first of all, thank y'all for the over 300 people that are up in here watching right now. But 40 likes, guys, I'm going to need those thumbs to go up a little bit, just like this here. Go ahead, hit that thumbs up, show us some love as we are showing you this love right here as the GOAT continues to give you knowledge and make you a more awesome basketball fan. And Matt Peck with the dulcet tones out here giving you all this love. Hit that thumbs up for all these things, y'all. Go ahead, man.
Joey's on vacation right now, but he did briefly join us for that conference call earlier this afternoon, and I'm pretty sure the information was relayed to us in that conference call that Troll Joe is going to need some more thumbs.
He's going to need, well, the words that were said were, ah! So, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's what was said. There he is right there.
There he is.
He needs his thumbs. He needs the thumbs, y'all. He needs all of them. Give that man the thumbs. The Fonzarelli, the Arthur Fonzarelli of trolls is our guy, Troll Joe, ladies and gents. Oh, man. So the Bulls are looking at the Miami Heat as far as the DeMar DeRozan trade. That's what we're hearing. DeMar DeRozan and the Miami Heat and the Chicago Bulls. I hate it. It feels like vomit coming out of my mouth saying it. I don't like it at all. No, I don't. I don't want the Heat to have anything nice, just like I don't want the Knicks to have anything nice. But, you know, it is what it is. But Barry Jackson is reporting that the Heat have made calls on DeMar DeRozan, and DeRozan also has interest in Miami, per multiple sources. But Lakers and other teams are reportedly involved. The Heat present similar problems to the Lakers, except they would have to do a sign and trade. They don't have a mid-level since they are over the apron. Will, please explain to me, if they don't have that, how do you see this working out?
Yeah, it's going to have to be a sign and trade. Steven, would you mind throwing up those graphics if you have them? Yeah, so basically, like, it's just with the new salary cap information and restrictions, it becomes even harder for them to make this work. So whereas the Lakers, LeBron can, like, play ball with them and take less money to open up the mid-level exception, the Heat don't have that. They are already over the first apron. They would need to trade somebody to get out from under it so that then they could create space to take DeMar in via sign and trade. And that's possible. It just, again, requires a third team because the Bulls can't take on that kind of salary.
Now,
So
when you say trade, what kind of player do you when you say in trade that player? What kind of player
so we're talking about them trading a Tyler Hero or a Duncan Robinson to Detroit, Utah, one of these teams that's going to have cap space, and not only like hope that they would just take them, but also give you back an asset. Because what you don't want to do is what the Lakers don't want to do, which is attach a pick to Tyler Hero to dump him so that you can create space to do a sign and trade where you have to attach an asset to get DeMar back. Because now you're giving up 2 picks to get DeMar, and that's challenging. That's not something that teams want to do. So, teams like Orlando, Utah, Detroit, maybe they are willing to take one of those guys on just as like a free agent, basically. But that's still a lot to ask. Maybe they give up a pick for it, and that helps facilitate something with the Bulls. But that's kind of the holdup. And then, Barry Jackson followed up and he said, after initial discussions between the two sides, Heat follow-up on DeRozan is expected in 24 hours. There's no indication Miami would move mountains to sign him, but they've said they like him, especially at a bargain. In general, they've been eager to explore things instead of immediately signing Haywood Highsmith, which remains a strong option for Miami. Caleb Martin seems priced out. So basically right now they are working on ways that they can create some space to potentially get a run in at DeMar. But again, what they don't want to do is attach picks to clear out the space to do that. They want to, I think they'd probably be willing to attach a pick to get DeMar, but not attach a pick to create space to then attach another pick to get DeMar. That's, I think, the moving mountains part.
Oh, man. Matt, your thoughts on DeMar to the Miami Heat, sir?
The basketball fit doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me unless the Heat want to just double down on their slow, plodding half-court offense that we've seen from them out of the last few seasons. I also am very curious to know what the hell's going on with Jimmy Butler. Like, there was talks, maybe he'll go to Philly, maybe he's done in Miami, wants to be done in Miami. Obviously, the Sixers getting Paul George pretty much put the kibosh on any thoughts of Jimmy going. But am I crazy, or has it been like all quiet on the Jimmy Butler front over the last 48 hours? Like, there was all kinds of talks about some NBA reporter said a week ago, like, Jimmy Butler is done in Miami, and said it like confidently. And where are we now? But so
I think the last I heard on Jimmy was that they were not going to do an extension this year. He's going to play this year out, and he expects to be in Miami long term. But obviously, they're not going to get that settled just yet. So that puts pressure on Jimmy to be available every game, which we know he is not really capable of doing, which I think is why they have interest in DeRozan. You need, when you have older veteran players who aren't really able to play every game, but you still have aspirations to be in the playoffs, you want a guy like DeRozan to help keep that floor high.
Sure.
The Bulls were never able to tank with DeRozan because he's too good. That's what other teams need. Yeah. They need to be so good in the regular season, and then obviously, DeRozan's a great player. He can be great in the playoffs, but that's when, Jimmy can come in at the end of the season and be playoff Jimmy. That's, I think, what the Lakers want. That's what, the Heat could potentially want. Any of these teams, the Kings who have just gotten involved a little bit. It makes sense from a regular season perspective, even more than a playoff perspective, where obviously that also helps too. So it just, the moves have to be made. In order to get to this move, you got to make a move first to open up the move. So that's I think what teams are trying to figure out right now. And yeah, I mean, Kyle Kuzma is still on the board. Obviously Donovan Mitchell just signed a 3-year max this morning, but Brandon Ingram could still be available. There's other players that could still be changing teams that I think are also kind of stalling this out. But there's so many teams right now, Bulls included, whose rosters are just like not complete. They're not ready for next season yet. And so a lot of action still will take place. It's just like a couple of barriers to entry that are really holding this thing up.
Yeah. Steven, I completely forgot that Jimmy Butler is your guy.
Yeah.
And that is your thing. So your opinion, I do want to know what your opinion is on DeMar going to play with Jimmy.
I say I'm going to make a little tweak to that. Instead of having DeMar play with Jimmy, let's just trade DeMar for Jimmy, give him right back here where he belongs. Sorry, Peck. And I could live happily ever after once again.
Matt, your thoughts?
I don't know if I want your
thoughts. You know what? F it. I at this point am so lacking in any faith in the Bulls organization to ever be good ever again. Let's bring Jimmy Butler back. Sure. Come on back, Jimmy. That'd be fun. No, I mean, obviously that's not happening. But look, we're talking about DeMar going to the Lakers or maybe going to Miami instead. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Do I think that when Jimmy Butler is available and not, load managing himself throughout most of the regular season, him and DeMar is not a great fit on a basketball court together. It's just not. But I think they're fairly good buddies. At least they were 10 years ago when they were on that team playing for USA Basketball, singing Vanessa Carlton together. So maybe there is some desire between both of them to become teammates and play in Miami together. I'll hate it if DeMar goes to the Lakers. I will at least understand it because it's him going back and playing for his hometown team, which he has said himself has always been a lifelong dream of his. I might hate it even more if he goes to Miami and plays with Jimmy Butler and plays for Riley, and that team just fakes their way to another deep playoff run next year, which I'm always afraid of because it's freaking Miami.
Yeah, because it's freaking Miami. Like, that's what you should be concerned about for sure. I don't mind if he goes to L.A. Like, again, you're going to a whole new conference, only have to see you twice, and you're going home to where you wanted to be. Everybody wins for me in that one. I would absolutely hate it. He goes to Miami. I don't want to see that at all. I have no desire to watch that at all, man. I honestly do see the fit, though, Matt, of him actually being basketball-wise. I see the fit because I'm just like, Jimmy is not going to be playing all those games. So if DeMar is there, he'll have plenty of space to do whatever he wants to do and ball out like he wants to ball out. And they actually have shooters around him. And you still got Bam Adebayo out there causing havoc. He doesn't have to be completely inside all the time for him to make his presence known. You can get him on the perimeter, and he'll still affect the game in that kind of way. Bam Adebayo is honestly that good of a defender. But I see the fit of DeMar with the Heat, man. I don't like it. I don't like that I see it. But it's there. It's something there because the Heat always make room for those star kind of players. Now, I will say the Heat have not really made any of those big deals that we've kind of seen since Jimmy Butler, honestly. Haven't made those big ones like Victor Oladipo, Kyle Lowry, like those kind of guys they've gotten. They've missed out on Dame Lillard. We all thought Dame, or at least I did, thought Dame was going to be there. Sorry about that, Steven. Thought Dame was going to be there in Miami, but he was not. He decided to go to the Bucks. But I just find it interesting, man, that this is where it could end up for a guy like DeMar DeRozan, man. But it's just a crazy situation, Will, and it just shows you how important the cap is and how important the money is in this league. It's not just players going where they want to go. It's about that money, too, and that's very important for these organizations.
Yeah, and it's teams like being, I think, prematurely worried about the aprons. Like, the Clippers even put this in their statement when they let Paul George walk for nothing in free agency. It was like, we didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we were going to be stuck in the second apron. And they weren't even in the second apron yet. So it's like teams are just so worried about the penalties that are coming because I think the distinction is it's not just you have these owners like Steve Ballmer who are willing to pay as much as they want. There is no limit to the amount of money they can spend. Mm-hmm. It's different than that now. Now it's your pick gets frozen. You can't trade it. You can't use the mid-level exception. You can't aggregate salaries to trade for another player. So it's like basketball operations penalties, not just financial penalties. And that is a big difference for teams because the people who are making those decisions are the ones that are now hamstrung. It's not like, Ballmer just saying, sorry, the check's not going to cash anymore. It's like, no, you can't do your job and go sign a free agent. You can't do your job and go trade for a player. So that really does matter. But I mean, the teams we're talking about, the Lakers, the Heat, those are first apron teams. Those penalties aren't quite there. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why you're still hearing some of them. Haynes also mentioned the Clippers are not done yet, not in relation to DeMar, but they could still be a sign and trade. But ultimately, what's going to happen is there's going to be a third team involved because the Bulls have to get off of Zach in order to take more money back. So those two things are holding things up. But yeah, I mean, I think DeMar can still be a really productive player in this league. Obviously, he's not on trend with, the heliocentric star who has the ball for 40% of usage or nice. The rim rolling big or the floor spacer. He's not he doesn't fit into that neatly. And so I think that's why people are skeptical. He's also going to be 35 next year. Yeah. But clearly from just a on-court productivity standpoint, he's still really good and he can help. And I think teams recognize that. So it's just about finding the way to make it work so that you're not, breaking your back on the other end of this where you can't you can't continue to build your team.
Yeah, it's true. There is another play I wanted to ask about and talk about that is tied to this, which is wows me that it's tied in. That's Nikola Vučević. And I say it's wild because I don't think, and Matt or myself thought that Nuke was going to get traded or his name would be mentioned at all during this kind of period. But it seems like his name keeps popping up. Michael Scotto is one of those guys because he reported, furthermore, if DeRozan leaves, there's quietly a growing belief around the league that Chicago could look to move center Nikola Vučević and lean further into a youth movement and roster retooling, league sources told Hoops Hype. Matt, I know it's surprising to you to hear that kind of thing about Vooch, but I mean, just looking at it, where do you see this kind of ended up? Is there a team out there that you just like would make that run at Vooch if they could?
I mean, how could you not? I feel like Vuč's trade value just skyrocketed after his performance for his national team earlier today in the Olympic qualifiers. Absolutely cooking former Bulls center legend Cristiano Felicio playing for his Brazilian team. I mean, Vuč was out there going to work. I think it's funny that so many Bulls fans I saw on Twitter earlier, they were quote tweeting being like, "Where's this Vuč been?" And I was like, not playing against Brazil in a World Cup qualifier. Like, no disrespect to the Brazilian national team, but
fair.
If Vuč was going toe to toe with Felicio every night, he'd look a hell of a lot better. I am a little bit surprised that we are hearing more and more about Vuč as a trade candidate.
Yeah.
It's not surprising from the Bulls side of things, especially if DeMar moves on. Then fully embracing the youth movement makes even more sense. And then moving on from Vuč is in line with that. Are there some teams out there who still see value in Vuč's contract and the player that it's attached to? Because for all of the crazy money that got thrown around over the last couple of days, 2 years remaining in 40, 41, it's not outrageous money. And it's a starting caliber center who, to his credit, I know Bulls fans love to trash him for his defense. He has not been the floor spacer that we hoped and wanted him to be. He's consistently available. He shows up. He gets you 18 and 10. You know, his rebounding has fallen off a bit this past season, but he is a starting caliber center. You need the right pieces around him to play the right system around him, especially true on the defensive side of the ball. And the Bulls really have not had that for most of his tenure. It's not like he's a trash player. Bulls fans have pointed a big finger of blame at him a lot over the last few years. And this past season, I have been more aligned with Bulls fans who blame Vuč a lot for the team's problems when we all know that there are many problems about how this roster has been constructed because he just did not have a great performance this past season. But he can still play. So it's like, at first it's surprising to hear about all this Vuč talk, and then you're like, there's some teams out there who need a quality big, and Vuč is a quality big, even though Bulls fans, are not satisfied with his job performance.
That's true.
So much of like the Vuč analysis has to do with what they gave up to get him. And yeah, he was not worth all of that, but that doesn't make him like a bad player. And he did not shoot the ball well. I don't think anybody expects him to be a sub 30% 3-point shooter for the rest of his career. I think in a better situation, he could perform a lot better, but yeah, I just don't know if there's many teams that are going to be interested in that type of center. The league has really pivoted more towards your Derek Lively rim roller types, or you're like, you got Embiid or Jokic, like there's really not a ton of in between. So yeah, there's probably going to be somebody who, kicks the tires on him. 2 years, $20 million a year is not terrible. I just don't know who that's going to be. And I don't think that the Pelicans are a team that just lost their center. People are saying like, oh, they could be in the Vuč, market because they don't have Valanciunas anymore. It's like, well, they let Valanciunas go because that type of center didn't really work for them. They wanted like a defensive minded guy. That's why they drafted Yves Missy. So, I guess I could see that. I feel like the Warriors are actually a pretty good fit. He makes a lot of sense in like their, split action heavy offense where you could just give him the ball at the elbow and he can find cutters, find shooters. So I think there could be teams available or interested, but I don't think he's going to necessarily be like the first one off the market. I mean, clearly he's not. And so it's just going to be like a matter of I think like with guys like Zach and Vuč, it's going to be they're going to be like in response to the rest of the league and what other moves teams make and like kind of the finishing touch to the roster. I don't see them as being like the first move we make as like a foundational piece. Right. And so as you know, there's still hold up with some of these guys and some of these teams. It's just taking a little bit longer than you would hope for that to really materialize.
And speaking of centers, what was just reported while we were doing this show here, the Orlando Magic have signed Jonathan Isaac to a 5-year, $84 million contract to stay in Orlando. Hooray. I did not want him here. Congratulations. It would not have worked. If you know Jonathan Isaac, you know it would not have worked. No, absolutely not. But to piggyback,
stay away, you weirdo.
But to piggyback on what you're saying, Will, like Vuč, and I do agree with Matt, some of those criticisms on him weren't fair because of the position that he was put in. You're asking somebody who's not a defensive guy to be your best defensive guy. We're going to funnel everything straight to you. He's not going to look good because he doesn't do that well. But at the same time, things that he could control as far as the three-point shooting and things like that, he was not good at all. And it just kind of fell off a cliff during his time here. But he's still a double-double, and I mean a high double-double as far as, you know, he gets you 15-plus points, get you 10 or 11-plus rebounds a game. He can still do those things, and he's super durable. Like, he is going to be out there on the floor. As Will Purdue always says, your best availability, the best ability is availability. So those things he has going for him. He's always in great shape. You don't hear any kind of problems with him, you know what I'm saying, in a locker room or anything like that. And he'll fit in on those kind of teams that you mentioned, like a Golden State. Guess the question is, who wants that contract? Is that what it is? That's what it boils down to?
You're talking about
Vuč.
Vuč? Yeah, I mean, teams are still in flux. Again, I don't think he's going to be like the first. He's not going to be a foundational piece for anyone. I think that's really what it comes down to. And this is good information for AK and company to like learn, because they're not handling their business this summer the way that they did last summer, where they're jumping ahead of the line to overpay for guys.
Yeah.
And like, again, DeMar may be worth like much more than 12.9 million, and teams could be willing to pay him more than that. But like 40 million, that's too much. As great as DeMar is, he's 35. You can't be building around a 35-year-old making $40 million a year. And so the fact that they've taken the pressure off of themselves, I think that puts them in maybe not the driver's seat, but something closer to that with Zach, with Vuč, just because they're not going to be so desperate to move off those guys to create space to bring back DeMar. And so all in all, I think that what the Bulls are doing is the right approach. I'm not sure if it's like more process-based or more like results-based in terms of like they're committed to their new direction, and that's why they're not, you know, handing out these contracts, or that they've learned their lesson, or some combination. But I just think that teams will get interested. It's just like, we're 2 days into this. It's going to take some time. Yeah. And I think especially with, you know, some of these teams being afraid of the aprons and things like that, it's making things a little bit harder. So I don't know. I could see the Warriors getting in on Vuč. I could see a handful of other teams, but it's just a matter of like, the Bulls still can't take, or here's an example.
Okay.
So if the Bulls are willing to just let DeMar walk for nothing, maybe he walks, or they do a sign and trade, they still have that $13 million in cap space. Could you trade Vuč into somebody else's space, take back $30 million? Let's say it was the Warriors. Would you take back Wiggins for Vuč, where you're taking some money off their books for a longer period of time? You give them a player, maybe they want more, who's cheaper and who expires sooner. Would you get a pick for that? Probably not, but like, that's the kind of deal that I think could make sense. But now you're just stuck with Wiggins. So like, is it really worth it at that point? Or do you just want to play this out and see if Vuč can help some of these younger players? As more guys sign more expensive contracts, his looks not as bad. Maybe he's got a year and a half left on his deal. He starts to look more tradable. I think the slow approach is okay with this. And as I've said before, this is not going to be a situation where they flip the roster in a week and all of a sudden you've got this team that you are now locked into for 3 years. I think they're going to have to be a little bit more flexible and patient with these pieces, because they're not going to be able to offload everyone this summer.
True.
And even if they are, they're not going to get the pieces back that are going to be the fixtures for the future necessarily. I think that's why AK went for Giddey, because he was like, that's a guy I do want as a fixture. Okay. I know I'm not going to be able to get a Giddey for Zach, so let me get that fixture now. We can start to build with that, and then I'll just get whatever I can for Zach, and we can continue to move those pieces as they come.
Matt, any final thoughts before we get into some comments from the fans out there?
Well, yeah, I know we had at least one super chat to get to, but before that, our guy Steven, scrolling through Twitter, found a juicy little video, if you want to put an exclamation point on today's episode, because it involves the Bulls' number 11 pick, Modest Buzelis, getting some work in at the Advocate Center. Check this out. He goes through the legs into a full windmill dunk and throws it down.
He'll be in the dunk contest soon. Like
Rookie of the Year incoming.
Incoming. That's right. On the way. Oh, I'm excited about him. I am. I can't wait to watch him in Summer League. I'm excited about it, man.
Screw Rookie of the Year. He's going to be the first since Ben Gordon to win Sixth Man of the Year as a rookie.
He's going to be a starter, Matt, so he'll be an all-star on the team in the Eastern Conference. The East this week. He can do it. Shout out. East this week.
East is trash.
Steven, please, some of these super chats and comments.
Yeah, let's start off with a super chat here from After Hours Luke. He says, how can the Celtics have 2 supermax players with other high salary players while we are financially struggling with 1 max player?
Will?
Because the Celtics aren't owned by Jerry Grandpa Reinsdorf. That's how. They pay for winners because they're the Celtics and they care about winning. Next.
Why do you think Wick Rusbeck just decided to sell his portion of the team?
Because they're rich.
Because they're getting a little too pricey.
Yeah. I believe their starting 5 can be worth $1 billion.
I mean, they've got,
if I'm not right,
315 for Jalen and Jason. They just signed Drew
Derek
Holiday
White, too.
and Derek White to $100+ million deals. They are spending, and good on them. They won a championship. Like, that's what you should do.
Kornet got a check.
But also, I mean, that's why their ownership group is changing right now, because they're going out on top.
We're going out on top, baby.
Yeah. They're going out on top.
I like that.
They're definitely going to leave a mess for whoever takes over after them with all of this luxury tax money. I mean, my goodness, the Celtics books are going to be. But hey, they are doing it in the name of winning, with the goal of winning. And if you're a billionaire and you want to own a sports team as a passion, a hobby, and something that you are competitively serious about, then good for you, and spend the money you have to build a team that wins championships.
Oprah, we need you. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
All right, this one coming from our guy, Gary Ross. What assets would the Bulls get from the Lakers or the Heat?
Yeah, so I think this is where it's tricky. As I was kind of describing before, I'm not even sure like the Bulls would get anything. To me, I think that they would just be like doing this to do as right by DeRozan as they could by getting him a 3-year contract in a sign and trade, because that it needs to be 3 years, and by giving him as much money as they can. So that's why you would see like a D'Angelo Russell go to the Nets with a pick. The Bulls don't get anything, or maybe a 2nd-round pick or something, and they get DeRozan the money that he wants from the team that he wants to go to. I think that's really what they're in it for, because like they've really prioritized putting the players first. We've seen that come in a couple of different forms. Most notably is like overpaying the players, and that sets them back. Clearly, they're not willing to just give DeRozan whatever he wants now because they're moving a different direction. But I don't think that they're going to end up getting a lot back for him. And in some ways, I think just letting him walk could be the best case scenario, because let's say he signs a $13 million deal and they take $13 million back in salary. It's not going to be a player that's like they're really excited about incorporating into their future. It's just dead money on your books, and that kind of hurts you. So I think in some ways just letting him walk would be the best move, because I'm not really sure you can get very much at this point in a sign and trade. That could change.
Like you said, it's time. It's early.
Yeah, and like I said, maybe if Zach gets salary dumped into Detroit's cap space or something like that, now you open up a ton of space to be able to take back more bad salary for DeRozan. You don't have to involve a third team. Now maybe you get a pick for that, and that could make some more sense. But I don't expect the Bulls to be getting a lot for DeRozan here, because teams aren't going to be willing to give up a lot to get DeRozan.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, that's going to do it for us today. We thank you all for hanging out with us. Thank you all for joining us, man. We had over 362 people in the chat right now. Shout out to you for hanging out with us, man. Make sure you're continuing to hit that thumbs up. Give us a like. You see Benny the Bull over there. Give us a like. Shout out to Troll Joe as well. Join us tomorrow. We will be continuing these talks and these conversations. We'll see if something happens between now and then, if a move is made or if it's done. You better believe a podcast from us will be in your face. For my man Will the Go Gottlieb, my man Steven on the ones and twos, main man Matt Peck from the Mish House with that Coors Light. I am Big Dave, y'all. Y'all be cool. We out. Peace. Love.
We all silly like the mayor.